Mind.
So, Caroline, we're now live on YouTube in 30 seconds. So, anyway, just means whatever we say now could be heard, although there's probably nobody listening in on that yet because they don't have the link.
Oh, so nobody can go live on YouTube until after, is it?
Until we share the link, basically, and we start broadcasting.
Okay.
But I'm just not sure if somebody had the link, maybe they can.
It's just, Caroline, if people have trouble getting into registering for the webinar or anything like that, it's an alternative to give them the link to watch it live there.
Somebody had the link.
I can hear a bit of repetition there, do I? Or...
That's from me going live there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to kill that now.
Okay. Well, so when the clock hits 12 there, I'm going to broadcast this. Okay, so just...
And what are we 1 minute? Okay. Right. Well, good luck, Caroline. It'll enjoy it. It's good fun. And thanks again for coming on board with it.
Well, thank you.
So you give us the countdown, Alison, and you might also just towards the end, 3 minutes out, if you can give me a reminder.
Okay. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah. So you're live and you're recording live on YouTube now. So, and
okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, good afternoon. Welcome to our Timony webinar this week on navigating a path to high performance. My name is Ronan O'Farrell and I'm the CEO of Timony Leadership Institute, a not-for-profit institute dedicated to helping leaders lead better. Our topic for discussion today is navigating a path to high performance. And perhaps like me, you've been missing out on some of the sporting fixtures these past few months. By the looks of it, it may be some time before we see trophies hosted in the air in celebration. Well, our guest on this week's webinar is no stranger to high performance work that gives rise to great sporting successes and that lead to happy faces lifting trophies. Caroline Curd is one of Ireland's leading performance psychologists and is highly sought after in the field of elite performance. She's been involved in the backroom teams of 4 All-Ireland winners so far. That's Tyrone Footballers 2008, Tipperary Hurlers 2010, Dublin Footballers in 2011, and the Limerick Hurlers in 2018. She's also worked with world-class athletes, including Lions captain Paul O'Connell and the Kenyan 800-meter Olympic champion David Rudisha. Caroline works extensively with businesses as well on performance psychology for leaders at the top level, both here in Ireland, the UK, US, and Australia, and focusing on the area of high performance for individuals and for their teams. So it's a privilege to have you on the webinar this afternoon, Caroline. Just before we get stuck into our topic, it must be pretty special and exhilarating at times to be part of the backroom team of successful teams and individuals. What's it like?
What's it like? How long have we got? First of all, thank you for having me. It's a privilege for me to be on this webinar with you too and all the listeners. I mean, with sport and with business, when you work with a team or you work with individuals and you're working with them to get the best out of them and help them to be the best that they can be, and then it gets to a stage where they're on All Ireland final day and you've 82,500 people watching and you truly believe you've covered as much as you can to help them, and they go out and they express themselves, and when that final whistle goes, this huge feeling of euphoria is just incredible. It's just incredible. Yeah. And you see them achieve their dreams, these young men who have worked so hard to be who they are, and young men and women all over this country who work so hard to be the best. And it's just a huge privilege to be there with them on that day. But you know what the most special moment is? On the Monday morning, when you wake up and you realize it wasn't a dream, and then it actually happened.
It really did happen. Very good. Yeah.
It's an incredible feeling when you wake up that Monday morning and you just think, yeah, that actually happened yesterday. It's brilliant.
Brilliant. Yeah. Certainly a better Monday morning.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we're just moving on to our topic then, navigating a path to high performance. I suppose context here is important. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and the comment has been well made that while we're all in this together, we're not all in the same boat. I'm sure among our listeners, there are probably some who have lost loved ones due to COVID-19, and our sympathies are very much with them at this time. And at a business level, they're leaders we know at home, their hands tied, somewhat frustrated. They're leaders who are fearful of their business, the business future being in jeopardy. They're also leaders who we know are experiencing the busiest time of their lives, just keeping the show on the road and so forth. And we know, well, these stresses, if they're not continuous, can't they be performance enhancing? Can't we pick a positive out of this to respond? Because you have foundations for high performance that you've distilled out.
Yeah, I suppose over the last 14 years, I've just been engrossed with this world of high performance psychology. I do a huge amount of research in this area, and I work with a lot of great people, I guess, just to see how do we get the best out of ourselves. And definitely we're going through a time where it's extremely challenging, and we will discuss through over the next hour as to why that is. But I think the cusp of today is really to go through high performing fundamentals. So over the clients that I work with, and also people that I shadow, teams that I shadow, research I've done, there are common fundamentals that enable you to be high performing in your area of in life in general. And it does is, even though every leader is unique and every listener today is unique, these common fundamentals give us a fantastic foundation. Leaders will then layer their strengths on top of that, their unique strengths. But these common fundamentals we'll talk about today give us a huge foundation in relation to high performance and ensuring that we, I suppose, go after the best that we can be.
Very good, very good. And those fundamentals I know you've mentioned to me, there are about 7 that you've identified for achieving higher performance. Could we go through those in a bit of detail and just see, maybe the first one I know on your list is purpose.
Yeah.
And that features quite a bit in our advanced leadership program here in Timony. We've Professor Carlos Ray does a session on managing purpose. But can you talk us through a little bit about the value of purpose?
Yeah, well, actually, even before we'll hit into purpose, but the very first thing is that definition of high performance. And I think I just wanted to say that first, because during this time, everybody will have to relook at what their definition of high performance is for them. Mm-hmm. So we're going through, when we go through these fundamentals today, we're going to bring it into the whole context of what we're dealing with COVID-19. But first and foremost, I think everybody needs to just reassess what is their definition of high performance during this time, and be very, very clear on that, because you need that in order then to begin practicing the fundamentals. So the first one that we have is purpose, and that word purpose is used. We talk about it quite a lot. I know you guys in Timony talk about it a lot because it's so important. Mm-hmm. The definition I love best in relation to what purpose is how do you use your strengths to impact others in a meaningful way to you? Mm-hmm. So your purpose is why you do what you do, mm-hmm. but it must be obviously of huge meaning to you. And what brings huge meaning to your life? And 99% out of 100 is when you're helping others and using your strength to help others. So I think it is definitely a time of challenge. People have gone through horrendous pain, but it also is a massive time of reflection. And life has slowed down. So when I talk about purpose, people say to me, I don't have time, you want me to go through my values, you want me to think about I don't have time. We do have time now, and we have time to reflect because life has slowed down. We are out of the rat race to a certain extent. And I think now is the time to really focus in on this fundamental and understand that self-awareness of what is your values, what's important to you. And our default mechanism is to be self-aware if we stop doing. And that is what's so important during this time, and use it as a positive and use this time as effectively as we can to stop doing and listen to in relation to what's important to us, our values. And then you build on top of that and make sure that your purpose then is aligned with your values, which is key.
And this isn't something very complicated to do. Am I right in that? It's something, you can do by yourself. You don't necessarily need to have a big workshop to decide your purpose.
It's funny you say that, because sometimes people say to me, purpose, how do I find my purpose? Almost like it's this big search. Your purpose is there. It's within you. What brings meaning to your life is already there. It's just we have not stopped in our busy world to understand what brings meaning to our life. And it's in us, and we just have to look inside now to see what is that purpose and what brings meaning. And by even a simple exercise of sitting down and writing down all the times that you have been really happy and there has been huge meaning to your life, you will see a huge list of ways and different things you've been doing that is already bringing massive meaning to your life.
Very good, very good. I know on Thursday we're hoping to have a short webinar for our alumni on this whole area of self-awareness and understanding your underlying preferences with Alan, our coach, Alan McFarlane, and one of the tools that we use there for improving our self-awareness. So just moving on from purpose, then your second fundamental is process.
It is. Can I just catch you there? See that B5 assessment tool that Timony use. The output of that, because I've done that. I went through that assessment, and the information. So a lot of the listeners probably have done that assessment, and the output that comes from that is incredible because it gives you a huge insight and gives you further information. Maybe information that wasn't conscious, that you weren't consciously aware of. And that's super to have that tool. So for the listeners who have completed that, go back and look at that information, because when you go through your purpose, it gives a huge input in relation to what that meaning is. And just a final point on that, we're going through a time of challenge, which is what we see. Having really strong meaning during this time builds massive resilience. The more meaning you have, the more you are able to cope with challenge, the more you're able to cope with tough times. And resilience is a word I use quite a lot and I have been using quite a lot over the last number of weeks with different people I've been working with, because we need resilience, and having that really strong meaning and understanding your values gives us massive resilience.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, just for those who aren't aware of the what you mentioned there about the B5 Plus, it's a particular assessment tool we use for understanding your underlying preferences as a person and how that impacts or relates to the work or the job or what you're trying to achieve right now. And as Caroline says, very powerful way of knowing yourself, so that you can not just know, but embrace and hopefully exploit that for your own and others' benefit.
Sure.
So on process then, what do you mean by process?
Yeah, so process, a lot of our leaders listening today will understand this. It's bread and butter to them. It's the strategy and how we do what we do. But what's really important during this time now, and the challenges that we're facing, is in relation to process. If we go back to early 1900s, Maslow came up with Maslow's hierarchy of needs and what was really important to us, what we needed, and security, safety, belonging, connection with people, freedom, health, a huge amount of things that we're currently thinking about and at risk of today in relation to what we're going through. So two things we do control is our attitude and our actions. Mm-hmm. And having a process, a black and white process, whereby you have your plan in place as to how you're going to achieve your high performance definition, how you're going to put your purpose in place, is so important in today's world, because it gives us control over it. We then have control over that actions. And so you hear a lot of people in today's world talking about routine and structure. Mm-hmm. That's why it's so important, is because we need it. We need that routine and we need that structure, because we have control over that. And it enables us then to stay focused. There's so much distractions going on. There's a huge amount of distractions. You know, and I'd challenge the listeners today: how much time are we spending on social media? Yeah. How much time are we spending with the media, listening to every update that we can listen to? And the reality is, do we really need to be listening to all that? Do we really need to be listening to or reading every article that exists? Because a lot of the time, what we're reading is people's assumptions.
Assumptions, yeah.
No, it's not fact. It's assumptions. And what are assumptions? Assumptions are when people fill gaps when they don't have the facts. Yeah. So because we want a full story, our brain, the way our brain operates, we want a beginning, middle, and end. So every time we read an article, we're looking for that. But what we're actually reading is just people filling in gaps, because we don't have the answers. We don't know the answers. So by having your process in place and having your steps of what you're doing per day to get the best out of yourself and keeping that focus, it eliminates those distractions and keeps us in line.
And is it, given that there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty now at this moment, do we need to sort of relook at our process and see, well, what is within our control to decide or to move forward on? Or how do we deal with that fact that, you know, sometimes we just don't know what to do next?
Absolutely. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay. You know, and that's that lovely vulnerable piece, is, you know what? Sometimes we just don't know. But that's where I think connection is so important. And we'll talk a wee bit about it when we come to curiosity, is asking for help and learning off different people now in today's world when we're going through this, and adapting. We're doing things very differently. Even you and I today doing a webinar, we had this set up to do it in Dublin in the K Club, you know, we were going to do it, but it's changed, and we're doing it and we're getting it done. And I think people are adapting and have to adapt. It's changed, so therefore it's uncomfortable. And I think we have to be careful when we have that uncomfortable feeling, that you keep going through it, as opposed to saying, actually, you know what, I'm going to stop there now and I'm going to go back. Because if you do that, I think leaders will find this time very challenging, even more challenging, because they're not willing to adapt. Or if their people that they're leading don't want to go through that change, they have to influence them and encourage them to move forward in that uncomfortable feeling. Because the reality is, we're all uncomfortable. We're all uncomfortable because we don't know. We don't have the answers of what's going on.
And is that uncomfortableness, where is that coming from? Is that moving on to our third principle here?
I like that. Yeah, that's a good slide. You're good at it. Limiting beliefs. This is a massive one. It's a huge one for high performing leaders, because what are limiting beliefs? They're where we've beliefs embedded, not so much in our conscious mind, but in our subconscious mind, that are holding us back. And beliefs that we may have taken from life experiences, we've learned them somewhere along our road, and we really, now is the time. And again, this is a huge piece around self-awareness and reflection. And the B5 assessment tool comes in here too, massively. Being aware of the dialogue and the drama, to a certain extent, that's going on in our subconscious mind. What is it that we're saying to ourselves? What are we saying? What is that story, that conversation that we're having with ourselves on a daily basis? And some of it will be rational, and rightly so, but some of it will be irrational. And how good are we now in this world that we're living in, challenging that irrational thought? Because you need to challenge it, and you need to have that conversation. And if not you as the leader, if you see your people that you're leading having these irrational thoughts and allowing a lot of fear and anxiety to set in, we need to challenge it. We must challenge it. And how you do that is understand, well, where is it coming from?
Mm-hmm.
You know, where is these thoughts, this the beliefs, where are they coming from? And we'll go back to the social media piece as well. This is, a lot of people are getting distracted by it. A lot of people are reading stuff that's not fact, and they're choosing then to believe and take on beliefs from that world. And it's, a lot of it is having a negative impact on us, because the way our brain operates, I think it's important for people to understand. Our brain is there to help our body survive. That's what it's for. And so it errs on the side of caution a lot, and it looks for negativity so that it can protect us from it, protect the body. If you go back to the hunter-gatherer days, that's what we were in, fight or flight mode quite a lot. And in actual fact, today we're in fight or flight mode a lot. And what is that? It's where there's high adrenaline, and you know, we're either going to fight it or we're going to run away from it. And we really have to be aware of that, and we have to work extremely hard to not allow our brains to go really negative on us, even though it sometimes is the default. 2/3 of our amygdala, which is the emotional part of our brain, the neurons there is all about looking for that negative to protect us.
Protect ourselves. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we need to be careful. Would you believe, like, it takes, when you have a negative you've a negative experience, it goes straight into your long-term memory. When you have a positive experience, it takes 12 seconds to go from your conscious brain into your subconscious. So to transition from your conscious to your subconscious. So you can imagine all that negativity that's gone into our subconscious. And this is where, like, there's two tools that I think is so important. So mindfulness. Mindfulness has become a massive tool for people using. Why? Because it goes straight into the subconscious mind. And that's where our subconscious mind thinks in visual imagery, and it thinks in sensations. So it doesn't think in words. So when you're visualizing and you're doing mindfulness and you're visualizing different scenarios that you want to happen, and the positive side of things, you're reprogramming and you're reframing. And that's, to me, during this time now, it's key that we reframe and we work extra hard to go down that positive road of what we want to see, even though there is uncertainty. But what do we want to happen, and what is happening that is from a positive side, rather than just, I suppose, allowing our brains to get just sucked in so much to the negative side.
Negative side. Yeah, you reminded me of what a colleague of yours, psychologist Viktor Frankl, wrote in that inspiring book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes.
He made the point of, between stimulus and response, there's a space.
There's a gap, yeah.
And in that space is our power to choose and respond.
Yeah.
And I suppose we can choose how we want to react, and whether we build up that wall of negativity or try and break through it.
For sure. Like, and again, people have the time now. I do believe, I know that leaders listening today are still very busy in their business, but I do believe we have time now to engage in a bit more visualization and to engage in a wee bit more of the mindfulness side of things, just to really instill in our subconscious mind that things are going to be okay here.
Great, very good. Just before I go on to the next one, I forgot to mention at the start, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, which, if you'd like to ask Caroline any questions towards the latter part of the webinar, please write them in there, and we will try to get to them. There are over 100 people attending this webinar, so as you can imagine, we won't get to all of them, but you can even vote on ones that you think would be particularly relevant to ask Caroline. So Caroline, if we moved on to maybe the fourth principle, you mentioned it there already, curiosity. So healthy curiosity, I presume, versus an unhealthy one. For sure. And
what's curiosity? So I know you guys in Timony talk an awful lot about the growth mindset, because it's key. It's key, and developing yourself, learning. And if there was ever a time to I suppose, upskill. If there was ever a time to learn now more information and be curious and take time to read the books that you haven't yet read, or there's some great leaders. Actually, I was chatting to some of them last week, and I thought it was brilliant what they're doing every day. Some not every day, maybe once a week, they pick a person, maybe not in their network or not in their industry, but just somebody they admire or somebody who they feel that they would learn something from, and they pick up a phone and they have a conversation with them. And what a way, what a way to engage people during this time. And you build a fantastic network of people during this time, and people will take the call. They will take the call. So curiosity is a huge one for making sure we keep learning. But what's really important on the curiosity piece in relation to COVID-19 is there's ample research out there to show that we will never digest all the information that's out there. Like it's not possible. And there's, I'd say I have about 10 books upstairs that I still want to read, and I
haven't got to
get to them. It probably won't happen because I'll find other books I want to read or other articles. But there's this fear of missing out, and it has been well documented over COVID-19 that people are now jumping. They're saying, oh, I see this article that pop up on LinkedIn, or I see this, it's popped up on another social media platform, and I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to read this. And the distraction, and the reality is you could spend hours doing that. And are you really learning much? Whereas pick the conversations with really good people that you want to talk to. Pick a lot of the leaders that are listening may be aware of Udemy, UDEMY. It's a fantastic platform with really, really good online courses. That are fantastic. Webinars like you guys have set up every few weeks that's the type of learning I think that's really important. So be aware of the distractions that's out there from the curiosity piece, and not allow yourself to drift. Spend hours and not really have learned anything, because look for things that's going to help you master your craft, because what can we control? We can control how we do things, our actions and our attitudes, and so find things that's going to help you master your craft.
I know one of our professors, Alberto Ribera from IESE Business School, was pointing out that as well as a health pandemic, we're also facing an infodemic, where this sort of overabundance of information can drown us.
For sure.
And I suppose being comfortable that I'm not going to reach all of the books and all the podcasts and all the webinars and so forth, and settling for what I can achieve, or focusing, I suppose, on what I can achieve. What would you suggest as being the criteria there, the main criteria to use?
Well, to be honest with you now, and I have to be very honest with you, I suffer from this big time myself.
I do, I think.
Oh yeah, I do, because I know I have a massive list of books that I want to get through, and I'm not going to get through it. And so I think the real key is just to focus in and just decide, well, what I do anyway is, and it's not the right or wrong answer, it's just what I do, I suppose, is I just decide that this week I'm going to focus on this book, and I'm not going to allow social media to distract me with different articles. And then on another week, I might decide, well, I'm going to go through the Harvard review papers, or I'm going to go through some research papers that I haven't yet got to. And so I guess I chunk it out in different ways, so that I'm not, because we're so, well, I guess people are different, but I'm a disaster for jumping, and I might lose patience in one and go to another. And so I know that, because I have that self-awareness, that patience, I need to have more patience when I'm learning. So I suppose discipline, isn't it really? It's discipline is the right.
Discipline, right. And that impacts on how much news you read as well? Yeah,
since COVID, so at the beginning, I would say, right, numbers, I have to know these numbers, I have to know the facts. But now, once a week is
once a week.
Yeah, once a week. Why would I need anything more? I don't need anything more. I would definitely, in the first few weeks, I was there thinking, right, I need to have these facts, but I don't, because it's not going to change my world massively. I'm doing what the advice is, staying at home, social distancing, and all the great advice we've been given by our leaders in our country. And so I have two small boys here keeping me busy too, and doing work as well. And I think I think, yeah, once a week is plenty. Plenty.
Great. Well, so we've had purpose, process, limiting beliefs, and curiosity. The first 4 foundations for principles for high performance. And the 5th one now, high standards.
Yeah. Like this is a huge one, but there's two pieces to this one. So there's on one side is the standards of, are you doing the best that you can possibly be doing? Are you working as hard as you can be working? And in this world, to be staying positive, to be influencing as best you can, and to stay strong and resilient, and doing the best that you can. Are you being effective with your time and working really hard to be proactive versus reactive? Because I definitely think in a lot of clients I'm working with over the last couple of weeks, they're being more reactive. They're waiting and they're saying, and they're reacting as opposed to being proactive. And I know a lot of listeners, I know I'm speaking to the converted with the listeners today now, because I know the quality of people you have in your alumni, and you know, the proactive piece is key. It's huge.
Yeah.
But the other piece to high standards, and this is the piece I think that the listeners mightn't be as, they might be more guilty of, is intelligent recovery. So you can go after what you want and you can go after it as hard as you want, but are you recovering? You know, are you having that intelligence to recover? You cannot burn the candle at both ends like it. And athletes are brilliant at recovery because it's in their program to do it. But leaders in our corporate world are a disaster for it, because they're going to the next thing. They're massive achievers and they're going again and they're going again, but they're not realizing the impact it's having on them from even a mentality. It's impacting their sleep. It impacts their eating habits. It impacts, you know, if they're not recovering intelligently. And I think this is the time now to recover and hit that reset button and refresh. And just you know, I was speaking to a great man yesterday. He's a great leader, and he said to me, you know what? He said, I finally stopped. And he said, and it's okay to stop, because he says everybody has stopped.
Yeah.
So it's no more about the fear of missing out. It's, you know, the world has slowed down a bit. So let's take the opportunity to hit that refresh button. I have no doubt many of your listeners here today are coming off such a rat race. You know, they're on planes constantly, they're out socializing with clients, they're, you know, it's a constant rat race. So I think it's so important to take this time now on the intelligent recovery piece, because when we do get through this, and we will get through it, life is just going to take off again. It's just going to take off, and we have to take this time to hit that reset button. And I'm saying it to all the athletes I'm dealing with too, is let's refresh now. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to refresh and take that bit of time.
No more than physical muscles being, if you keep exercising them all the time, they doesn't work. So you have to build in that. So high standards in recovery.
Yes, exactly. Intelligent recovery, I call it, because and I stole that from somewhere. I didn't come up with that myself, but I read it in one of the research papers, and I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was a great way to explain it. And so I label it as that as well. I think intelligent recovery is a great way, because you have to be intelligent to recover well. Sometimes we take it for granted.
And with high standards, sometimes you can think of very big things, you know, that need to be done well. But even this, what we've been through with COVID, where the simple thing of hygiene, of washing your hands, you know, you need a really high standard if this is to work. The simplest daily action can be a matter of life or death. So is there something in that of right now it's high standards in the ordinary things? Not waiting for the big moment.
That's exactly it. That's brilliant. Yeah. It's the discipline around your high standards, around what we need to do as a nation to beat this disease or the virus, and to adhere, I guess, to what we're being asked to adhere to. And there is massive high standards in that. To do it effectively, but you know what? We're doing it because we're getting there, and we're winning this battle. And I think it shows that our nation is fantastic in relation to high standards, because we're doing it.
Yeah, very good, very good. Now, not surprisingly, your 6th principle is communication. Importance of communication. I know it's featured already significantly on these webinars about authentic communication, frequent, transparent. But we touched on it there a little bit earlier. If you don't know what to say, And often leaders do say it's a lonely place because everyone's looking to them for the answers, they're expected to know, to be able to say what's next. But right now, maybe it's quite difficult to know.
Yeah. This honest communication, it sounds, all right, well, that's one of the simple fundamentals we all know about communication, but in actual fact, it's the most complex one of them in relation to making sure that we communicate effectively, which is one piece of it, but it's what are we saying during this time? And a lot of listeners may have come across Brené Brown. She's a phenomenal social psychologist, and the research she's doing around vulnerability. It's just incredible. She has written many, many books and research papers on it, but how do we become vulnerable? And, because when we talk about vulnerability, people associate it with shame, associate it with weakness. But in actual fact, it's a massive strength. And for our leaders to be vulnerable in this time is fantastic, because it opens the door to their people being vulnerable. And what a gift to give your people, to show them that it's okay in this time to be vulnerable. It's okay not only in this time, it's okay full stop to be vulnerable. Yeah, and say, you know what, we don't know, but we'll put our plan in place and we'll control what we control and we'll keep after that. So the reason I say it's complex is because we still do struggle. We still do struggle to be vulnerable, because we do think, as a leader, I need to know the answers. I must know the answers, and we don't. And I think it's probably the most best way to gain respect when we talk about honest communication, is to show your people that it's okay not to know, and it's okay. Yeah, it's okay to admit, I don't know. I don't know the answers, but we'll work together and we'll figure it out.
And is that vulnerability, is that building greater connections, greater trust that ultimately really do make for, let's say, the high performance in the team, if there's that connection between the players? Or is that where it really impacts, or how does that vulnerability become a strength?
Yeah, you see, you have it to a T there, because I think in the past we would have felt if you're vulnerable and you really tell people what's going on for you, and some of that may not be good stuff that's going on, you think people will turn you away and they'll reject you. But in actual fact, it's the complete opposite. So when you open up to people and you tell them what's going on, and now is the time, because we do have more time to get to know people and know what's going on for them, and they open up and you open up, the trust that you're building, because subconsciously you're creating massive rapport with that person, because you're letting them in and they're letting you in. And so you're building huge trust. And what that leads to then is massive influence, because you allow that person then to influence you and your actions and behaviors and your attitude. And that trust is forever, has that phenomenal foundation there to build on top of that. So to me, it's key. It's key when we have teams operating together to have that trust, so that they know each other. They have that vulnerability, and they have the trust to have each other's backs. We need to have each other's backs, and this is the time to have each other's backs.
No time for solo runs or glory hunting.
No, definitely not. What team has ever won with just a couple of egos or stars? Yeah.
We'll come to your final principles. So we have purpose, process, limiting beliefs, curiosity, high standards, communication, and the final one, value.
Yeah. So this is a really important one in this time, because it's valuing ourselves and valuing others around us. There's two things that people crave, is to feel valued and to belong. And the belonging piece now has really been challenged, because we're not getting to connect. We're not getting to connect with people. We're not seeing people and giving them the hug, and that connection piece is missing. So,
and will be for some time in many cases. Even social distancing in itself is a barrier.
But the value piece, you don't need to be beside the person to value them, and this is really important. But first and foremost, you must value yourself. So I think, and psychology tells us, it's very difficult to value others if you don't value yourself first and foremost. So have that self-compassion to really understand what's going on for yourself, and value yourself, and give yourself the time and look after yourself. in this time, making sure that you have the right setup and structure for yourself, and whether that be looking after yourself, eating well, sleeping well, exercising, that side of things, and making sure just from a mindset that you're working hard to keep that positive side, and then valuing others around us. And how do we do that? Well, now is the time to find out more about our people, you know, how being thankful for what we have. And we're so used to looking up and comparing ourselves to others and saying, oh, look what they have. And now is the time to look down and say, well, look at all we have. You know, we have so much, and there's a lot of people who don't have anywhere near what we have. So be thankful for, again, there's ample research out there showing the impact of gratitude, and that self, you know, just understanding what really we have, and the serotonin, the oxytocin that releases into our system when we have that gratitude is huge. And now is the time, and value others, spend that time with them, whether it be a phone call, connecting with them, whether it be just, you know, what's great, what's going on actually is different teams are doing it, and both in business and sport, is they're setting up these WhatsApps and groups and Instagram, and they're setting up different conversations and, you know, quizzes, but not just normal quizzes, getting to know each other that bit more. And they're doing it through this type of platform. And I just think it's just brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's the time to do it.
And I suppose just on that, like the 50 days lockdown so far, you know, people have been reconnecting at home, families, eating and playing more as a family, connecting with friends online, as you've just said, or colleagues, and enjoying sort of simpler pleasures in life and seeing value in it. But it's at the same time, maybe particularly for leaders, with this cloud of, we've got to get back, we've got to sort of, how do you kind of manage that tension and really, I suppose, capture the value that's there, and appreciate that this is something that I'd like to continue with post the lockdown, but at the same time knowing I can't have it the same way as when I'm locked up at home.
I think if our leaders understand, and I know a lot of the listeners here today do understand this, because I think if our leaders understand that the time spent valuing people and building that trust and building that connection with them is far more profitable to them as a company than the actual monetary value, and that is for sure. And I keep referring to research because that's where our facts are in relation to the research, but I think our leaders definitely have to make sure that they really see that and see the value of that piece of it, rather than keep pushing and pushing to go back into this rat race. Because we will go back stronger. We'll go back stronger people. We'll go back in better shape mentally than we ever were if we get this piece right. If we take this time now to value the people we have and understand them and get to know them, we'll go back into a different world, and it will be far more beneficial to us than what we were going through. A time there where there was no time to ask people how they were. I was working in teams who were sitting beside each other for years, didn't know anything about each other. Why? Because they didn't ask, because they don't have time. You know, so when people say to me they don't have time, really what they're saying is it's not important enough. And that's not the reality here.
Yeah.
It is important. It's very important.
I mean, human relationships are essential for our survival, and we're seeing it certainly in a very real way at the moment.
For sure.
So these 7 principles for high performance, this is what you're seeing in different ways in different teams and different individuals who are achieving that. They've combined these, or they've focused on particular ones. Do you need the whole package?
I believe so, yeah. I believe so. And I'll tell you why, because in the research I've done, and, you know, I go around the world and I shadow different great leaders, and some leaders you come across and they might have 4 or 5, but the really, really good ones, the really successful ones I have come across, they have all 7 of them. They have all 7. And there's no rocket science to them, you know, it's not, but there is complexity. The complexity comes with the discipline. And spending that time on them. There's no leader listening here today that is not aware of what I've spoke about today. Right. But it's just combining them and making sure that you're disciplined enough to put that solid foundation in.
Very good. Okay. Well, we'll open it up to some of the questions. I know Philip Clark here has posted one up saying, if you had a week to 2 week period to invest in self-development, what would you advise is the best way to invest in himself?
In himself?
Yeah.
I think definitely the piece around so I'm assuming he's not on about courses, or so. Is he just on about himself? Well, look, I'll take it for granted that he's on about just himself, maybe upskilling himself. I definitely, that piece around self-awareness and understanding yourself. You could give him your assessment tool as well to help him. But if you understand yourself and you understand that subconscious world that, you know, and all the beliefs and that world, all your life experiences and how it has brought you to the person you are today, I think it gives you a massive foothold as a leader to progress in relation to where you want to go and what you want to do. I really do. That's a huge part of my world is making sure that people understand that about themselves. Yeah,
very good. Well, we go to Michelle Vance, who is going to ask a question live, if we can get this working. So, Michelle, are you there?
Hi, Caroline. Hi, Ronan. Can you hear me?
Very much so. Yeah, thank you.
Caroline, great to hear your comments there. Interesting to hear the piece about intelligent recovery. I'm sure we could all do with focusing on that for the next while. One question I had for you there, just in terms of teams. Many of our teams have been separated and are feeling deflated by what's going on in their businesses. Recognizing that the current situation is more akin to a marathon than a sprint. Yeah. What are some of the tools you recommend to keep people motivated and focused?
So this is a huge part on the process, Michelle, chunking it down. And like the frameworks I've put in place with teams is just week by week, and making sure that we're focusing week by week, because every week changes. And I know, you know, you can think long term, and you can, you know, we can get it into an awful mess in our heads in relation to fear and, you know, what the projected, you know, what people are saying around the economy and stuff like that. But definitely chunk it down. Go week by week and get them to focus in on that week, because I think that's how our brains work best, is when it's zoned into a short space of time. And it definitely removes an awful lot of the anxiety about thinking into the present or even going back to the past. And putting really, really solid, detailed plans in place for your people so that they can focus and measure it if you can, and make sure that there's constant communication around it, so that they don't see it just as a plan in place and then there's no attention around it. Make a thing of it, you know, and that's what a lot of the sports teams are doing now, is making sure that they have that focus for that week, and that there's a constant communication around it, to make sure that they stay in that space.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Michelle, for that. Caroline, Mark McCormack, who's one of our alumni, does quite a bit of work in personal development, particularly with younger children. And he's asked the question, would you consider creativity as an important tool to stimulate self-awareness?
Creativity is, you know, it's when you're working with, well, I was going to say when you're working with young people, but it's when you're working with everybody, it's tapping in that creativity piece is tapping into your subconscious. And so there's nothing better for young people. Even my wee man, he's only 3, well, he's 3 in July, but getting him to do creative things and even drawing and stuff like that, and understanding even what they're thinking, because that's what creativity does. It taps into what are you thinking in that subconscious space, that space where we don't have access to every, you know, we're consciously thinking every day, but we don't tap into the subconscious a lot. Yeah. Unless we put it into focus for ourselves. So creativity is huge for young people, because it gives them great understanding of what's going on for them.
Going on, very good. Yeah, and that can be, it's not necessarily taking out the paintbrush, but that could be part of it. But so many different ways to be creative, and
for sure. You could write a song, write a poem. You know, there's so many different ways to be creative. It doesn't, even the arts, it's not even just about the arts. It's, you know, sometimes mindfulness can be very creative. Visualization can be very creative.
Well, Mark has just actually written a poem and posted it on the chat, which we'll share with you later. So putting it straight into action straight away.
Brilliant.
So we have another question from Carl Daly, which we'll take live as well. If Carl is there.
I'm here, folks. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Carl. You're very welcome.
Good morning, Ronan. Morning, Caroline. How are you?
How are you?
How are they all in Sligo?
Almighty, mighty us Schligonians, keeping strong.
Yeah, no, I grew up there. I think I mentioned that to you before. I lived in Ross Ballincar for 12 years. So
That's right. That's right.
listen, just a question I want to ask you. It's similar to Michelle's question, but you were talking this morning about, we're in a strange time, and everyone's talking about the new norms, the new norms, whatever that might turn out to be.
Yeah.
But how much of a challenge is the loss of human touch and personal contact in all of this, in this era of continuing social distancing? Like Ronan mentioned, human relationships are essential, and you mentioned, valuing yourself and we have time. But in a team situation or in a situation where you've got staff, it's all very well to be structured and doing Zoom calls, but is there other ways of compensating for the fact that you can't beat, in my opinion, being in a room and looking at people eye to eye and, having it out? How do you overcome that? Or have you had situations where some of your people are just struggling? And what do you say to them?
Yeah, definitely that human connection. And actually myself and Ronan were speaking about this too. Just being there face to face, you have that, it's an unconscious connection really, that's there, and you feel more supported, you feel more secure, you feel that person is there for you. But the reality is, and this is the new norm, is that we don't have it and we can't have it. And this is the piece that I talk about change. And for me, Carl, it's about awareness and making sure that people are aware of, right, we don't have it. And why is this important? What is that sense that we're missing, and to communicate it and to explain, even it's not even to go too much into the psychology, but just our basic needs as human beings is to have that connection, to have that relationship with people, and to have that conversation. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. Sometimes I find people are afraid to go down that world of them conversations because in case something comes up that they're not able to handle. But to me, that's okay, because who can handle it? It's whatever you're thinking and whatever you're feeling. So to me, it's about clarity and just making sure people understand and having these conversations about why we're missing it, and saying, you know what, it's not comfortable. We need to change. We eventually will get back. So what can we do now? What can we do to make sure that we still feel valued and have that communication as strong as we can to get us over this, and get us back into the workplace and get us connected again.
Very good.
Super.
Maybe also to add to that, just getting creative about what ways could we, in the new norm, be connecting. When you mentioned it there, even just the quizzes or things people are doing that you wouldn't otherwise have considered doing, but can create a real bond and connection with people.
Yeah, well, look, there's a fantastic picture there. I think when you were advertising the seminar this morning, there's a fantastic picture of Caroline surrounded by Limerick hurling players and John Kiley giving a talk. I mean, I think that is the stuff that people miss.
Yeah.
That people that are people, they just like to be around people. That is very difficult, and good and all as technology is, you can never replace that.
it.
So look, let's hope we get back to it at some stage. But thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
And I see it with the lads in Limerick. Do you know what? There's going to be a massive appreciation for that connection when we get back, because I hear the lads talking and they miss each other at sight. And when we do eventually get back, the appreciation we will have for that human contact will be incredible. And I think that we don't see the positive of it yet because we're still going through it, but we will see the positive of it. And
when we come back out,
take for granted again, being able to just call out to our parents or just connect with the lads playing hurling or in businesses, going in and having a cup of tea with your colleague. Like I don't think we'll ever take it for granted again. I think we'll definitely have reframed our thinking around all of this after COVID-19.
Afterwards, yeah, very good. There's another question here from Porrick Maloney about whether you could give one or two simple things that you do to help create and maintain a discipline on a daily basis. So that going back to that idea of you were mentioning earlier of having that discipline on a daily, weekly basis.
So the routine is key, and just awareness. Awareness around your routine and why it's so important to you. So my world has completely changed. I'm in Sligo. I'm for the first time in 14 years. I'm off the road. My husband doesn't see it as a problem because
he's delighted. Very good.
Cards, so he's working quite a lot these days. But
keeping us off the roads.
Yeah, he's keeping us off the roads. So my world has adapted massively. I have two little boys. Cathal will be 3 now, and Liam is only 10 months. And so I had to reframe my whole way of thinking and have discipline to do that around putting a routine in place that isn't. So I'm obsessed with the area of high performance psychology. I would read about it every minute of the day if I got a chance, but I don't, because I'm also a mum to the 2 lads and a wife and all that good stuff. So having that discipline, following your routine and sticking to it, because remember, we're in full control. We are in full control of our thoughts, we're in full control of our actions, and we're in full control of our attitude. And constantly triggering yourself to remember that, because I think sometimes we forget and we get lost in distractions. But having triggers, there's great leaders out there that has triggers, constant triggers in their daily world that will trigger them back into the present moment. When we're in that present moment, we're at our probably happiest because we're not thinking of the past or the future, and we're not getting caught up in the world of fear. And so having those triggers to keep yourself in the present moment, whatever they may look like, it could be a visual trigger, it could be an auditory trigger, having them placed in different places to bring you back into the present moment. It's our best chance of even moving into that world of the zone or the flow, as people call it.
Very good. Very practical. Okay, we'll go to maybe our last question, live one from Michael Burke, who's in Belfast.
Hey, Michael.
Good afternoon, Ronan. Good afternoon, Caroline. This has been a great presentation. Thank you. Caroline, I was at the last Timony session there, and you did a presentation, one of the dinners one evening, which was brilliant. I think I recorded it actually on video, so I'll play it back to you sometime. But isn't this interesting that my questions, strangely enough, overlapped with both Michelle and Carl's, and that I was going to ask you, Caroline, how do you help people find a sense of fulfillment when they're physically detached from their team and their clients? And I think you've more or less answered that. So fortunately, I have a backup question. Okay. So this one's really just around lasting change.
Yeah.
And like change really is stressful for a lot of people. You know, I know we go on about it, embrace change and so on, but many of us and many people resist change, you know, and it's very difficult to get people to, you know, to adapt to new circumstances. But so do you think there will be any lasting change to us as individuals, as teams, as businesses, and how we interact with each other following on from this? I mean, this is going to leave presumably quite a lasting change with most of us, this period of isolation, isn't it?
I guess you could go down two different roads here. You could think of the negative piece, which is this is going to be with us for quite some time. We're going to have the social distancing. You know, we're not going to be comfortable, I guess, in each other's space for a long time yet, and possibly until this vaccination comes. So there's that road. But then there's also the road of going down or heading down the road of understanding. You know, I suppose I keep harping on about self-awareness, and I keep harping on about the piece of understanding and learning yourself and learning what's going on for you. And you know, people do resist change because it's uncomfortable and it doesn't feel good. And even I know myself in just different ways that I'm behaving over the last couple of weeks. I can notice the different dialogue and the different stories I'm telling myself about. You know, sometimes I'm eager to get back on the road, and then you have to catch it, like, and you have to be aware of, well, what is the story you're telling yourself? And I think we have to the whole world of change is, I think COVID-19 is going to show us that we can change, and I think we can do it in a very effective way, and it'll show us that how adaptive we can be. I think we underestimate ourselves. I think we underestimate our ability. I think we underestimate how far we can go. I see people today, you know, it's mostly grandparents, they're texting now and they're on WhatsApp and they've never even heard of it before, you know.
Yeah.
That's not comfortable for them to do that, but they're doing it. So I think as leaders, we definitely, Michael, need to steer our people down the road of the positives out of this and seeing it for what it is. Yes, it's tough, and yes, people have lost lives, and that's horrendous. But let's as leaders try and influence our people as best we can to take that road of, well, how is this going to benefit us, and show us that we can adapt, we can change, we can live with this new norm. Of course we can, and we'll get to know more about ourselves. We'll challenge ourselves a bit more. We'll see actually what our thinking is. Is it rational? Is it irrational? And, you know, just open up to the things that are important to you now, and the values piece and the purpose and that fulfillment piece, because I think a lot of our leaders today will go down that road and get to know themselves a bit more, and they wouldn't have done it only for this.
Well, that's a great note to finish on, Caroline, and thank you very much for not just a comprehensive overview of the fundamentals of high performance, but also the different aspects of just dealing with the current crisis we're in, and challenges and the opportunities facing us as well. Where could people find out a bit more about what you do?
Your
website?
website, yeah. And they can just reach out, Ronan. They could reach out, and I'll connect with people. There's no fear. Because if anybody has any questions, I know not everybody will have got a chance to ask their questions. So just reach out or shoot me a mail or give me a shout, because I think this is the time where performance psychology is so important. And I think it's the time that we have to come together and stay the course here and trust our leaders. And if having a conversation with me or shooting an email and can help, then make sure you do it, because I know it's challenging times. I do, for sure. And any way we can come together and help, then just give me a shout.
Well, thank you very much again, Caroline, for that. Just before we close, because it is time, just to let you know, next week's webinar will focus on the practical steps some businesses are taking to get back operational. 3 of our alumni will be joining us to share their experiences. That's Enda Quinn of STC Trailers in Antrim, Salim Maguire of the Queely Group in Naas, and Des O'Dowd, the owner of the Inchydoney Hotel in Cork. And be sure to continue giving us feedback on what you find helpful and what you'd like to hear more about. And in the meantime, enjoy the good weather if you have it. And we look forward to being in touch again. Thank you very much.
Are we up here?
Or just...